Good afternoon, everyone. For those of you who don't know, I'm Pete Savage. For those of you who do know, you're rather unfortunate. This afternoon, we're going to talk about remastering Knoppix. We're going to cover a few topics. What is a live CD? What is remastering the live CD? Why do we want to remaster the live CD? We'll talk a bit about the process of remastering, how you can optimise it, and then some further ideas of where we can go on from that. So what is a live CD? There's been a few around that people know about. There's the Knoppix one, there's the Ubuntu one. It's a complete operating system running from a CD or other removable media. And this is something which is becoming more common. People are putting these on USB sticks and things so that they can carry the entire operating system around with them. It requires no installation or setup. It will just run straight from the CD drive, boot up, and you should have everything available to you that's on that CD. And it runs on practically any computer, which is the other good thing. Why are they useful? Well, one of the number one reasons why I use the Knoppix CD is for system recovery. If the hard drive goes in the machine, if something else goes in the machine, you can still boot up from the CD and copy important files across before sending the machine away for repair or anything else. It's a quick system for setting up servers. Now this is something else which Knoppix has built into it, is things like an FTP server, a Samba server, and those are all built in to run from scratch. You just tell it to run that, drop the files in, and you've got an instant Samba server set up for you, which is really good. And it'll also set up, if you put it in a machine which has got several hard drives in, you can tell it just to straight away share those hard drives. So you can then access those hard drives from anywhere on the network, which is another really beneficial thing. It's good for teaching because it can't be broken. Seeing as it's all running from a CD and it's a read-only system, you can't break any of the contents or any of the packages. And portability. Instead of carrying your laptop round, why not just carry a CD round and use any available computer that's there? So what is remastering? Well, remastering is taking this CD which already exists and modifying the contents to suit your needs. These modified contents can then be recompressed and turned back into a standard ISO image which you can burn onto a CD using any available tool. So why would you want to remaster a live CD? Well, perhaps the most important reason is to add extra applications. Knoppix doesn't have LVM support, which is something which a lot of people are wanting. You could customise the GUI with new graphics, icon sets, backgrounds, whatever. As we were talking about, there's modification to allow it to run from a different media, such as USB sticks. You can set up the operating system specific configurations particular to your environment or organisation. So if you wanted the web browser to have specific bookmarks already set up, then you could put that on there. You can distribute a demo or a sample of an application that you've written. This works very well in web-based applications. You can buy or download CDs which have got a Moodle, which is the virtual learning environment, and various other applications that are already set up with a web server. You just boot off that machine and then you can access that and test it out without actually having to install it anywhere. And of course, you can change the default background Knoppix CD to anything, picture of your dog, cat, hamster, or favourite beer. So what are some current Knoppix remasters around? There's Knoppix, which is a security penetration testing CD. XFLD, Pilot Linux, and OSS Watch Linux, which I think is the OSS Watch one is the one that actually has Moodle and a couple of other web systems that are already set up on there. So there's two real types of a Knoppix remaster. You can remaster straight from the live CD, or you can actually do a hard drive install of this live system and remaster it from that. Now there are a certain number of advantages and disadvantages. Your remaster from a live CD is generally slower than a hard drive install. All the programs are run from the CD, so therefore you can imagine that it's going to be slower than if you were running off the hard drive. It's sometimes difficult to test applications running the live CD version, specifically if they're graphical. This can present a bit of a problem. It's overcomable, but it's a lot easier to test it on a hard drive install. But probably one of the advantages of doing the live CD one is that there's no hardware configuration saved. If you install it to the hard drive first, Knoppix does save some of the configuration for your particular system, and this all has to be cleaned up before you send it back to the CD image again. So the remastering process takes the following basic steps. You prepare the sources from the CD, you jet root into the environment and install any packages or do any customization. You prepare it for creation and you create the compressed file systems, and then you create the ISO image at the end of it. The system requirements are not really that high. But to do the CD ISO image, as opposed to doing the DVD, all you need is a gig free of RAM, and that can be 256 meg and a 750 swap, and 3 gig storage space. If you're doing it from the hard drive install, obviously you'll need slightly more and you'll need several partitions set up to be able to do it. So just to go through the basic steps, from the root shell inside Knoppix, you would mount a partition that you created, create your Knoppix directory where you're going to store all your sources and mastering. You can make the swap file, and then you make 2 directories, one which is the master and one which is the source. We'll talk a bit more about that in a minute. Copying the Knoppix sources. We had to copy basically everything that's on the CD across to the hard drive so that we can modify it and then copy it back, because obviously you can't modify it once on the CD because it's a read-only file system. This step normally takes quite a while because it's copying the entire uncompressed file system over onto the hard drive. This step is copying the ISO Linux boot. It's just a simple, just straight copy command, nothing else. You can copy the index file if you want, and then all the other files that are on the CD need to be copied across as well. After that, you root into that environment, and if you need to get internet access or anything, you need to mount the prop file system. And then you need to edit your resolve.conf or copy the one that's from the live Linux CD back into there so that you can actually access the internet and set up your DNS servers, etc., etc. Then comes on to the fun bit, which is modifying the sources. Use the apt-get update to get your latest package lists. Do not do an apt-get upgrade because it will break the entire system, as several people have found out. The remove one to remove any packages which perhaps you don't want on there, especially large ones. OpenOffice is a great candidate for getting rid of if you don't want it on there, because it takes up a couple of 100 meg on the CD itself. And then finally, the apt-get install to install anything extra that you do want. So once you've done your customization, modification, etc., you have to unmount the prop, which is very important, otherwise the CD ISO won't work at all. You leave your root environment, and we need to do a cleanup. Now, if you're doing a distribution that you're going to send out to other people, you don't really want the history of your bash in there. So you take all that out, back out any other changes that you don't want burned to the disk. So when we edited the resolve.conf to give you internet access, you need to edit that back out again and take out any information that's in there. And finally, this last command removes some of the other files which are left there that aren't needed. This rather large command at the top creates the compressed Knoppix file. Now, for those of you who've looked around the Knoppix CD, you'll find there's a big file in there just called Knoppix, which is about 700 or 640 meg. This creates this file. It basically takes all the sources that you've modified, compresses them together, and puts them into one big file, which Knoppix will then mount when it's running from the live CD. A couple of the options to have a look at: the cache inodes hard links files, so they only appear once on the CD. So if you've got 2 files which are exactly the same, and you've got a hard link to the other one, it won't put the file on there twice, it will only put it on there once, which obviously saves you space. No back skips all the backup files, and the pad option is used for some operating systems which have a bug. When they do the read ahead, it needs to read ahead some padding, otherwise it will crash. We then create the MD5 sums list, which you'll also find a file on the Knoppix CD which says MD5 sums, and we then go on to create the final ISO image. Now, through all of this, I've just used the mount HDA1 as my source, but obviously that could be any partition you've got on your system. Now the thing is, how do you test the CD once we've made it? Well, if you've got a fairly high-end system, you could use QEMU and just boot your entire ISO image as if it were a CD inside your computer. That gives you the benefit of, you don't need to keep rebooting your machine, you can test whichever elements you like, but it is fairly slow on lower-end machines. But the good thing is that it comes installed on Knoppix, so there's no other applications you need to install. You can run it all from the live CD. Any problems at the moment? The Knoppix developers do a lot of extra optimization on the sources, and repackaging the contents as they are will not be enough to get it to fit back on the CD, because I tried it. If you take just standard Knoppix 4.02 CD, unpack the entire thing, and then recompress it back up, it's about 40 meg larger, so it won't actually fit on the CD. Another problem that I had was I needed to update the KDE Bluetooth, and that was linked to the K-Desktop lock, and there was a lot of problems there, but figured it out in the end. There's a lot of forum posts which deal with how to sort that out. And the other one that I had is a heavily modified KDE package. I wanted to install PHP 5 on that, and to do so it needed to update KDE base, and that broke the whole of KDE. So I'm actually looking for another way of doing that, or find out what's going wrong. So what kind of optimization can you do? Removing all the temporary files. When you do apt-to-tune or an apt-get, obviously it stores a cache of the files that you downloaded. If you delete that cache, you'll save yourself a lot of space there. Dev-orphan to remove the orphan files, and there are various other optimization scripts that you can find on the internet. So just a quick run through of the process that we talked about. You take your standard Knoppix CD, make a partition on your hard drive with two directories, master and source. You copy the index.html if you need to straight across. You copy the boot directory straight into the master. Inside the Knoppix directory there are other files which get copied straight through. The only one that's different is the Knoppix CD. Now this is uncompressed as you boot up Knoppix, and then that gets copied through to the source directory. Time for a beer there, so that takes a while. We then customize it however we want. So we root into that environment, do all of our apt-get installs or apt-get removes, whichever, and then that will modify the sources. We then take those and build that compressed Knoppix image file, which will turn out to be about 600 meg. Another beer there, because that takes a while. And send that back to the master directory. Then the MD5 sums are calculated, and that gets sent back to the master directory. And then finally we're ready to create the final ISO image, which is the image that you can burn back to a CD using any of the tools that you normally would. And that takes a while too. Once that's done, you're finished, and there's your Knoppix remaster. So where can we go on from that? Well, I'm currently working on a project called DevNX, which is hopefully going to be a complete PHP design environment. It's hopefully going to support PHP 4 and PHP 5, so that you can aid in code migration between the two. But as you've seen, there are slight problems with that at the moment, but I'll hope to get around those soon. It's got Quanta Plus on there, and Gult, which is a PHP debugger, which can do things like variable watching and breakpoints. We talked about some other live CDs there are, which is Ubuntu, and I know that the Fedora guys are currently working on a live CD for the Fedora distro. So just a few screenshots. This is the boot screen of the DevNix as it stands at the moment. A modification to KDE, and just the standard KDE desktop at the end. Some useful links. Everything that I've done with DevNix has been from those two how-tos, and they are extremely detailed, and most of the commands that have been in this presentation have been from those how-tos. They're really, really good, really easy to follow. So there's a summary of what we've covered. Thank you very much for listening, and I hope you try creating a Knoppix remaster.
Okay, is there any questions? I've got one I'll start off with. You showed the screenshots of your live CD. Obviously there was a desktop environment that had been modified.
Yeah.
Your KDE load screen, was that a patch?
No, that was
KDE?
There are just some PNG or JPEG files that are just in the KDE directory. You just go in there. I just copied them across so that I knew what the pixels were, and then just pasted over the top, saved them, and copied them back again. That was
okay. And back another couple of slides, you had a boot screen again. Did you have to recompile your kernel to do that, or was it
no kernel recompile to do that? There's actually a file inside the boot folder, which I think is called Logo 16, and there are several tools available to convert a bitmap to a Logo 16 format. But that was fairly painless as well. And once you've done that, you just drop the Logo 16 file in, and you've changed the boot screen.
Excellent. How do you plan to distribute your?
I don't know yet. That's the typical bit.
Presumably making it available for download is the tricky bit, because of the size of the
exactly. Yeah. Well, I'm hoping to cut out as much as I can. The problem obviously becomes, you look at an application and say, shall I remove that? And you think, no, because somebody might want that. So it's quite tricky to see what you're going to remove and what you're going to keep in. But also there are licensing issues, especially with Knoppix, because some of the packages aren't free. There's things like Adobe Acrobat Reader 4 on there, I think, which will obviously have to go. So I'll have to do some delving to find out licensing issues on that. Apart from that,
yeah, I was going to say that because we looked at, obviously we distribute Knoppix CDs as part of the InfoPoint project, and when we looked a bit closer at the license on the Knoppix site, it does pretty much do this at your own risk, and you're responsible for licensing the packages.
Yeah, exactly.
It's not guaranteed they're all GPL or whatever.
No, there's a lot of discussion around about which packages are and which packages aren't GPL, and there doesn't seem to be a definite answer anyway. It's a pretty grey area, Knoppix, but as long as you look through the licenses of each package, which numbers into the hundreds or thousands, you're all right.
Okay. Any more questions?
Not a question, but something to point out is another use for live CD is firewalls.
Yeah.
The same benefit. The hacker can't modify anything on the CD. You've got firewall books from CD.
Yeah. Well, they can modify it while it's running.
They can modify it.
But obviously, once you've found out there's an attack, you just click reset, and you'll be back up to where you were again. The DevNix one hopefully will have all the settings and all your work environment stored on a USB stick. So you just boot off the CD with your stick in. It will copy your entire development directory and set it all up from there, which is where I'm hoping to go. And you could probably do the same with a file and have all your settings stored on it.
Well, I know there's one firewall distribution where they use the archaic thing of a floppy disk.
Yeah.
Because once the settings have been written to the floppy disk, you can flick the tag and it's read-only. So reboot again, cleanses it.
I know various ways of modifying the floppy drive to get around that.
The new Ubuntu live CDs, the DAPA Flight 3, they've now got a new switch so that you can have your persistent settings on a USB stick.
Yeah.
But it's got the only benefit that if you actually have to get any applications, they will install into your persistent area and will be continually available on subsequent reboots. So that's quite useful.
That is useful. Yeah.
Do you have any problem with sort of the fuse file system and things like that?
No,
it's not a play.
No, it seems to be. You'd never know it was a read-only environment. And when you modify it, obviously it's all on the CD, it's all on the hard drive, so it's rewrite, so you're okay. But I haven't encountered any problems, permissions and things like that. It seems to be fine.
Any more? No? Okay. Well, thank you very much indeed, Pete. It's a very good talk.